the way I described 2008, I was in the business, the first year, like in 08 and 09, we're like, all right, this is going to get better the next year. The next year, we're like, sure, this is going to turn around. And by like 09 and 10, we're like, we're pretty much all going to die. And I'm not even sure people are going to buy homes anymore.
Yeah. You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, Dwiggins, along with Mr. Crazy Uncle Keith.
Yes, sir.
We had Mr. David Childers on, the president of Keeping Current Matters, the content genius. Tell our viewers and listeners about this fun conversation we had.
Yeah, David's literally is a genius when it comes to content. He's been in the game for a long time and is at the helm of a company that spends all day, every day trying to figure out how to push out the best content. So, of course, we talked with him about why do agents struggle with consistent content, the single best book on content creation he has read, and then one that I have read. His favorite follow on Instagram, which I'm going to go do right after we record this. Exactly how to answer questions from friends and family over the holidays. Some of those big ones like, is the market going to crash? And some of those other things. And my favorite part probably was a small, simple little question that he asks when someone makes a statement like, is the real estate market going to crash next year? He gives you a little piece of gold that you should put into your conversation track when you're talking with people. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to make you listen to it. Put it in your ears, kids.
David, welcome to the show. We are excited to have you on the pod today. And just forewarning, if you hear the noise, that's Mike Gardner running outside my window. Sure, we
David, how far away are you from inventing the noiseless leaf blower? Because we could make a lot of money if we could put that together.
I'll think about it.
Okay.
Well, they'll still come up with a sound.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Maybe chirping birds or something. I don't know.
They'll come up with the sound. It's like those electric cars. They make a humming sound so you don't get run over by them.
Right. Yeah. So. We'll workshop this later. Not into a microphone.
So let's start with a little bit of your background, just kind of a speed round. But you've been in the real estate space since 1999, if I believe that to be correct. And you've got a massive background in communication and information to real estate professionals. So I won't tell them your background. Why don't you give us a little bit about how you got to be the president of Keeping Current Matters and everything that led up to it? So.
Sure. No, I appreciate you asking that. And it's been a journey like all of us in the business, 25 years now. I think a couple of years ago, I'm like, I guess this is what I'm doing. But
and you couldn't get out because we try every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In 1999, I actually skipped my college graduation, walking in graduation. I spent 8 years in college, and I'm not a doctor.
That sounds like another story worth telling.
But I skipped walking to go meet Todd Duncan, who Todd forever was the lead, sort of coach and trainer in the mortgage business, and went to work for Todd, and we had a wonderful sort of run together and had a tremendous run. He wrote a book called High Trust Selling, if you're not familiar with it.
Didn't he also write Time Traps?
He did. He wrote Time Traps as well, and several other books.
That was the first time management book that really resonated with me.
That's good.
As a young
time blocking and really understanding what you're doing with your time. So Todd and I ran a business up until 2006. We sold a business that we had, in 04 and 05, we thought we were brilliant in the mortgage business. Come to find out, we had a pretty good market to work in back when you didn't have to qualify for a home loan. But we sold a business that we were in.
When did you sell it?
In late 05. And so in kind of January 06, I started consulting.
Pretty good timing, bro. Pretty good timing, bro.
We did fairly well. And so I started consulting and I've always been in the business of helping originators or agents or title professionals building products to help them sell and connect more effectively. And I met Steve Harney back then, and he had just sold his real estate business. He owned the largest real estate company in New York City and kind of heading out to Long Island, and he wanted to help agents. And so 16 years later, that's turned into Keeping Current Matters and all that we do. But in between here and there, went back into the business, worked for Bank of America during the time they were the largest holder of distressed assets back, post 08. And I'm blessed to be have had a career in real estate and in mortgage. Blessed to have great relationships all over the country, and grateful for all that we get to do. And Keeping Current Matters now, I've been here for the past 7 years, helping agents communicate, what's happening in this market. Yeah, and certainly love that, and thankful for the opportunity to get to do that.
We'll make sure we link back to KCM because you guys put out some amazing content that's perfect for real estate and mortgage professionals. We do speed round questions, a little way that I can build my reading list, and we can also share
It's self-serving for Keith.
It really very much so is. But to be honest, I've had some of the best book recommendations over the last 18 months from doing this podcast, and I love it. So
what's the best one? Give me the best one, or give everybody.
Man. Well, okay. I've got a couple because it's not an easy answer. Probably the most surprising was Damian Ailes gave me the recommendation of listening to the Bruce Springsteen audiobook.
Which I got to hear about over dinner for an hour and a half between the two of them.
It's like Bruce Springsteen is sitting in your living room telling you his life story about growing up as a young man in New Jersey and the rock star and the whole 9 yards. It was one of my favorite audible experiences I've ever had. So that'll be the one I'll share. But now your turn. Your favorite book or podcast? Could be this year, ever. What do you reread every year? Anything that triggers book or podcasts, and why?
Sure. So I the one thing I didn't mention before I got into this business in college, I worked for John Maxwell, who's a leadership author. Yeah. So big fan of his. Same. 21 Laws is an amazing book. But I'll tell you that one of the recent books that I've read this year is a book he wrote called Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And it is a phenomenal book. I believe even in what we do at Keeping Current Matters and what agents do every day, becoming better at asking questions is something that I want to do. I want to do, and I want to master that.
That's a good one. I'll order it today.
So mine will be, if you could have lunch with one person, current or historical, who would it be and why?
Gosh, that's a really good question. If I could have lunch with one person, I think right now I would probably want to talk with, Warren Buffett or Elon Musk or somebody doing something that's pretty remarkable. Probably Elon Musk.
Get greedy. Take both. It's just taking both to lunch. Yeah. Because you couldn't have more opposite sort of approaches, but both brilliant and thoughtful and smart. And one of them is sort of more of buy and hold, and the other one's a little more of a disruptor. That'd be good.
That's definitely opposites. I think the Elon. I mean, as Elon talking to a guy who's literally creating stuff where rockets fire to space and then he grabs them when they land, with
a pair of chopsticks.
With a freaking chopstick.
I'm trying to put myself out there that way, right?
But I mean, man, can you imagine the thought process of goes on to be able to every time I see that video, I just go, what? It's wild. Yeah. I feel like I'm watching a Hollywood movie, but it's not. It's real life. They literally caught the damn starship.
Right? So, it is nuts. It is nuts.
All right, so let's get into some main talking points. So you and KCM, you guys are the content company. You guys do some really incredible work, and I think if people haven't checked them out, we'll make sure they can click in the show notes to do it. But why do you think so many agents struggle with putting out regular content? I'm not trying to rag on the industry when I make that question, but
or people in general, right?
Fine, but just meaningful, relevant content. Why is this such a struggle?
Well, I think this is a really good question. So I think most agents, here's where I build kind of the premise. Most agents understand they see the market, and they know what's happening. Good ones sort of understand it, but great agents, and I think that's what, most agents aspire to be, is I want to be a great agent. The great ones that are good at content can explain what's going on. Okay. So I don't think that agents lack, the ones that we get to talk to a fair amount, they all know they need to be putting out content, but the biggest issue is that they tell us oftentimes is, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to put out into the market. And listen, I think in today's world, there are plenty of sources, and not just Keeping Current Matters, but there are plenty of sources that you can tap into for what to say, right? But that's the first thing that comes up. The second one is they focus more on maybe making it look like themselves or their brand or color or whatever they might want to do. And I'm not saying that's not important, but they don't realize that being consistent in what you're saying is way more impactful than, just kind of figuring out. So I think the core issue with content in the world today is, okay, how do I talk about things? What do I say? And then can I do that consistently across multiple channels?
Yeah.
That's what wins.
Yeah. I'm going to add a point to that too. I think everything you've said, and sometimes I think everyone's trying to, like, if it doesn't go viral, you feel like you failed, right? Or, you take a picture of your lasagna dinner and you get 80 likes and 13 comments, and then you put out your thoughts around the economic update and you get 2 likes and no comments. And so you think, well, this shit isn't working, right? Yeah. And the truth is, people see both. It's just, we're wired to want food or we starve to death, right? That's like in our wiring. So it's much easier for a person to hit like on a photo of your lasagna dinner, but they still read it. They still read they read it all. It makes it to them and they process it. But
I would add to that. And I think you're right. I'm not saying you're right, but I think consistency trumps all of that.
Totally agree.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
We just had a
what
guest
I'm saying is,
I
think the reason that they don't get consistent is because they post some of this stuff and they don't get the reaction.
1,000%.
Yeah. So they're like, well, this doesn't work.
Well, the part to remember in that too, since we're having this discussion, everybody can relate to lasagna.
Right.
If you're posting content that people don't know or research, or they're not from the industry, they're going to read it, but they're not going to comment because they don't want to sound like an idiot making a comment that isn't there. And I think that people forget, like when we post stuff all the time, I'll post an article on something to get like no comments on it, and then somebody will come up to me in the hallways and be like, hey, I love that post.
Right, exactly.
Like, oh, but you didn't. Yeah. I didn't know you read it. Like, yeah, I read
you didn't engage with it at all.
Yeah.
When I was really getting started with short form content, I put a little Post-it note on my screen right next to the camera where I would record, and it said $, over dopamine. What I mean by that is, like, you get that dopamine hit when you you post a puppy photo and everybody goes crazy, right? Or like some cocktail and some sunset and everybody goes bananas. Well, that's a dopamine hit for you. That feels good because people are giving you a response mechanism that tells you you're liked, right? But the dollars are made when you do those things too, but when you show them you're a professional, they may not get the same engagement, but you're generating dollars with maybe the economic post, or your thoughts about the marketplace, or your thoughts and feedback on how to approach a post-settlement world, right? Well, all of those things may not get the same engagement as a sunset photo, but that's how you get the dollars. Do the dopamine ones for the dopamine ones, but they're in 2 different buckets. And that really helped me, like, when I started my sort of short form content process.
When you say consistency, what does that mean specifically? Yeah. Like, give me an idea, go deep on that. Like, how often, what does consistency mean? Same subject matter every day, every time, certain times a day. Can you go a little bit further on that conversation?
Sure. I think there's a couple of things that I'll say on that. One is taking a topic like we're coming up right now. We're at the end of the year, a lot of holiday gatherings and things like that. But taking topics and saying, hey, here's a question that I'm getting asked a lot. And it's about what's going to happen with prices next year, whatever the question is, right? We come up with a question that we have what I would call a relevant market opinion on. And then I want to come up with my content. And then I want to then, publish that on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on TikTok, on every channel that I'm on. And I want to do it in a consistent manner. Now, I think consistency for some people is daily. I think consistency for some people is twice a week. But the question is, how often are you going to do that? And are you going to continue to do it? And this is what you ask, like, let's take it back to where we started. What's the struggle? The struggle is most agents spend more time in trying to make it look good than getting it out.
Than getting the content out.
Yeah. And my point is get it out. And the other thing I would challenge people with too is and I really kind of think of this outside of our industry, because there's plenty of people that create content and are really good, truthfully, in our industry. There's a lot of them. You can find them. And if you're not following people that you really like in the industry, you should be. But I look for people outside of our industry that I follow that I'm like, they're really good. I'll give you one that I love. It's really good. Donald Miller. I don't know if either of you know Donald Miller. He wrote a book called Building a Story Brand. He's really the quintessential story brand, author of how do you incorporate story into everything you're doing. His Instagram feed, everything he publishes, I'm like, I'm interested in that now. And it's seemingly random things, but the bottom line is he's putting things out that people are interested in.
That was Donald Miller, Miller.
Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. He's really good content creator, and does a great job of putting, interesting non-real estate content out.
There's another book that really, I think, resonates with what you're talking about that I've shared with a lot of people and gotten great feedback from. And I'm curious if you've read it. It's They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. Have you read that one?
I haven't. No,
I'll buy it for you. I'll send it to you. But it really is exactly what you said. You don't have to have like a content manager. You don't have to have a 4-day brainstorming session. You just got to get a notepad and a pen. I know I'm old. Or you could get your phone and your notes page. Sorry, kids. And you just start writing down the most common questions you get from clients.
Not that complicated.
And then you answer those questions into a camera.
But what in your opinion is a great recipe for content? Like what would you recommend on that? Is it what Keith said, just start writing all the questions your clients are asking and then you've got your content, or is it more?
I think it's a great place to start, right? Yeah. It's one area of, I tell people this all the time, and I'm biased. If you're looking for content, go follow Keeping Current Matters on Instagram and just look at what gets traction that we talk about. That's all you would literally have to do. Yeah. I can tell you right now, you talk about home prices, you'll get some engagement on that one. People have opinions. You talk about mortgage rates, you'll get some engagement on that one, But who are you watching? And then what I want to do is I want to go, okay, that person talked about that. And we have view at scale, right? I mean,
you see it across the big network,
followers on Instagram. Well, a video that gets 100,000 views or 150,000 views or whatever it is, I'm like, okay, that's something that resonated. Even on our team, when I see something running like that, I'm like, okay, how do we create more content in like that vein? And it's oftentimes the ones even that I'm like, okay, this is a winning idea. We're going to put this out there. It gets nothing. This one over here that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that lights out on it.
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah.
Is there a balance between posting content and asking questions? Like, writing the content in such a way it's asking for engagement?
Sure. I think
what I mean by asking is like you're, blah, 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 blah. What are your thoughts, to see if people will start engaging in the conversation?
Right. And I'm not trying to put myself out there as a social expert on any stretch of the imagination, but I think engaging pieces to say, hey, what's on your mind? Another thing that is, a lot of agents are doing right now is listening for, hey, what are things that you are hearing about the housing market? What are, if I do have a network, a social following, what do they want to hear about? What are people curious about? I can tell you right now, what's 2025 going to bring?
Right. Yeah.
Is this market? There's a lot of talk of, what's ahead, not only in the world and politically and all that kind of stuff. What's ahead for 2025? What's ahead? Is this market sustainable? Right? Yeah. What's up there? The one thing that I believe foundationally why Keeping Current Matters was started was based upon a couple of different concepts. One, it was a quote that Dave Ramsey spoke, probably 15 years ago. And he said this, he said, whenever you're looking for help with a major transaction, whether it's, life insurance, it's banking, he mentions real estate in there. He said, look for someone with the heart of a teacher, not the heart of a salesperson.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do with content is say, okay, how can we educate someone? How do you educate somebody? The world that we live in the business that we're in, here's what I'll guarantee you. There are a ton of opinions, right, about everything. We've come out of an election here.
In America? No way.
Come on.
Opinions.
No.
And you know the old joke about opinions, right? Everybody's
Yes.
got. But here's the other point. Very few times in our business is my opinion or this person's opinion based upon a fact. It's based upon whatever they thought they heard or read, or my uncle said this. Right. And so what I want to help people have is a relevant market opinion based upon a fact, right? Here is what I see happening with inventory, with prices, with days on market, so that I can educate people. And here's the ultimate piece of this, kind of to tie this up in a bow with content. If I can become the educator in my market and the go-to resource, as an agent, I don't have to convince anybody to do anything.
Right.
They can then make the best decision for them and their family.
They already see you as that trusted person anyway.
And you actually, you and I were at an event not that long ago where you spoke a bit about like how to answer some of these common questions of the holidays. And we're going to get to a couple of those here in a minute. But first, just to shift gears just a little bit, I've been doing a lot of research, and we've had a few guests on the pod around AI. Seems like artificial intelligence and content are colliding quickly and rapidly. And I even had a meeting a couple weeks ago with someone trying to do custom voices, like where it's in the agent's own voice and it's auto-generating AI content. Like it's wild, right? It's wild place.
The world's coming to an end.
Yeah. So as the person that I know who generates more content really than anyone else, you're at the helm of the company that generates more content than, most anyone else in the residential real estate space. How do you think about AI? How do you think about AI and content creation and how those two worlds are going to collide? What does that mean for the industry? What does that mean for your company? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think right now we're leveraging AI, and we have a powerful vision for how we believe it will impact agents. But let me say this. I think there's, this thought sometimes in the world, like what all is AI going to sort of eliminate? And I think in this area of content, it's not going to replace content creators. I do not believe that. I don't believe that AI will do that. I believe what it will do is it will automate repetitive tasks. And it's going to help maybe personalize content based on user data or to get better engagement or even consistency with tone and style. And I think there is this opportunity for people to take an idea of a content piece. Let's say you were going to write a piece on home prices in Northern California or in your neighborhood or county, whatever it was going to be. And then AI can then take, I saw a killer article in Inman. If you haven't seen it, it was called the Chick-fil-A on Sunday. Have you seen this, Keith? I see you.
I saw the headline, but that one I did not read. Now
it's called the Chick-fil-A on Sunday listing presentation. And Jimmy Burgess wrote it. If you follow Jimmy or seen stuff he writes in Inman, and he basically took a core piece of content and he said, write a LinkedIn post in ChatGPT, write an Instagram post, write a blog, write a listing presentation, write an MLS description, and then just go all the way down on all those pieces. That's what AI is going to do in the content space.
You still have to have an idea to start with.
Right.
Yeah. It'll help. It won't help as much. It can help with some ideation, but what I've found in my use of it is it doesn't really help with coming up with the idea, and it doesn't help with finalizing the idea. But that stuff in the middle, I find it to be very helpful.
Completely.
You don't think that I'm playing devil's advocate just because for the hell of it.
It's a podcast. It helps if we do that.
You don't think down the road that AI is going to be looking at all these different places going, here's the 20 pieces of content that need to be generated based upon what we can see is popular and would get the most amount of, traffic, and it auto generates these 20 pieces of content for you. And it's like, pick from one of these to post today and set the rest 19 up over the next I'm making this up over the next 19 days like that.
I would say that day is today. You can do that right now. right? You can go into ChatGPT and say, what are the most 20 popular real estate ideas or pieces of content?
I even think we're not too far away from, not only will it do that, it'll also write it for you in your voice. Like if you're someone who has, I don't know, I've got thousands of social media posts where I've typed it in my voice, right? Like I haven't yet, but I could upload it all into ChatGPT and say, write in my voice.
Yeah.
And the article could come up, it could spit out in my voice, but I still have to read it and go, that's not really me. Like, good job, nice attempt, ChatGPT, but it's not there yet in my experience where it can like really sound like me, but it can get like, I don't have to come up with the idea per se, and I don't have to write the first draft, but I can edit and create and add in anecdotes and make it my own on the other side. Like that's where I think it's heading. And I don't know how long, maybe I'd love your thoughts, David, till it gets to where it's just writing it and posting it and like we're on a beach somewhere and content's just going
but
on.
I think here's what I have a hard time believing. So I think that James, in your example, and certainly what you just said, Keith, that train's coming. I agree with you on that. But at that point, if everybody is doing that, we're in a commoditized world that is just like, what? I don't know that people are going to care about that. And I'll even, so I've got 3 kids, 22-year-old, 20-year-old, 17-year-old who's still in high school. I was talking about a post with my oldest that a family member of ours, I'm not going to, kind of put him on blast here on this.
I know he wants you to do it.
And he goes, that came out of ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. And so even people that are sort of noticing it can pick up on that pretty quickly. So I think authenticity is going to be key. And then I think it's going to be the people that know how to write the right prompts and get the right information in that are going to win versus just this boilerplate, here 19 ideas and I'm going to put them out there. I don't see that as a differentiated concept.
I agree.
Well, and also we want to make sure that people are still doing some original things and adding their thoughts and opinions on it.
I could make the argument that it's going to become even more important.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That'll be the difference between, a craftsperson and, an assembly line, right? Yep. Like you can get it faster, cheaper, but if you want it great, you're still going to have a craftsperson build it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Let's shift gears a little bit, because I saw you deliver some amazing content around it's the holidays. Yeah. We're on the other side of Thanksgiving and rounding into Christmas as this will be released. So how you had some amazing questions that people are going to get asked. And I love this concept of, what pitches are going to come. So you might as well be ready to rip those pitches out of the ballpark. Right.
Right.
And you had 6, we just picked a couple to talk about. Maybe I'll take the first one and James, you could take the second one, but, let's just start with this one. How would you answer, you're at the holiday party, you're having a cocktail with a coworker's, significant other, and they say, will the housing market pick up next year? Like, Are we going to shake this off? Where are we headed, David?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good question. I want to back up and let me sort of give you the premise behind this.
Yeah, the concept. Yeah, great.
Then the really good question that I think you should always ask, remember we started off talking about good leaders ask great questions. So the premise of this is we, over the next, few weeks, will see more people than we've probably seen all year long. You know what I mean? With holiday gatherings, maybe something at church or community or whatever it is, right? We're going to see more people. Some of them we want to see, maybe some of them we don't want to see. You know what I mean? But we're going to see them. And the topic is going to come up.
Yeah.
Right? Real estate. That's one thing that everybody's got an opinion on. And, it's like, I always, it's like Uncle Charlie's over there. He's like, I wouldn't buy a home right now.
Right.
Right? Can I answer that question? And can I answer it with anything more than I'm in the business? And I'm like, well, you really should, because people are like, well, you're in the business. You probably are going to say something like that. Or it's immediately suspect.
Or the other dumb one that people always say, like, it's always a great time to buy real estate. Like, that is not helpful to the conversation at all.
So a couple of things I would say about that. So whenever somebody asks you a question about, hey, what do you think prices are going to do next year? Or seems like there's, no homes on the market, or I think this market's going to crash, or whatever the deal is. The question if you can swing this in there every time, I would ask this question before I answered. I would say, tell me what you've heard. Tell me what you've heard. Right? Well, I had the news on the other night, and I heard consumer debts at an all-time high. That doesn't sound good. Mortgage debts at an all-time high. And you're telling me prices have risen over the last couple of years, and the home down the street just sold for this, and there's no way it's worth that.
Right.
This doesn't sound good, right? We have to be able to understand that and empathize. There's in this type of work, there's this, and even in real estate, there's what they call the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is the thought that because I understand it or see what's going on, I expect you to understand it.
Right.
And honestly, if we were consumers and we're looking at the real estate market right now, you should be a little scared, right? You're telling me prices have gone up in most markets over 50% over the last 5 years? Mortgage rates have, when mortgage rates started rising 2 years ago, they rose faster than in any time in recorded history, right? Affordability is at a crisis level in this country.
David Davis, right now you're painting a bleak picture, brother. Like, what's the way out?
This is what consumers are fed with every single day. We have to understand.
Yeah.
I was at a dinner party. It was like it's in a mastermind kind of group that I'm in, and the guy that leads it, pretty accomplished guy, leaned over to me and he said this. He said, "David, is it true that there aren't enough homes in this country for the number of people that want to buy them?" And I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
If you're not in the business, that's a little bit scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right.
So that's sort of the premise. So the question that you asked is, will the real estate market pick up next year? Based on what forecasters are saying, I think there are three things that people should expect for next year. And even as we talk about this, I think one of the biggest issues that agents face right now is the challenge of what do you expect? 2024 has been a rough year.
Yeah.
It's just, let's put it out there.
It sucked.
It's very typical. The other thing I find agents do, that their answer to how's the market is highly correlative to how many they put into contract in the last 60 days.
Right.
Like if they've
sucks or whatever it is.
right. Yeah.
So there's three things you should expect. And this comes from, and I'll give you all of this research, and you can tell people in the show notes or however link to it.
Yeah, we'll link to, he's going to mention some stats and some graphs. We'll link to all those in the show notes, so you've got them if you want to see them and use them and whatever else. Let it rip.
Yeah.
Yep.
The total home sales in this country is projected to rise next year. Combination of existing home and new home sales. So I think you should expect in nationally that we will do more business than we did this year. I don't see anybody calling for us blowing the doors off, but the consensus for existing home and new home sales is about 5.2 million transactions next year.
From where is that data coming from? Just sorry, because that's way different than stuff
Fannie, MBA, National Association of Home Builders, and NAR. When
NAR's
you look at their
4.2
forecast, the consensus, and again, anytime you use a Keeping Current Matters graphic, in the notes of the slide is the source of all the reporting,
right?
Source of all that.
Just to be clear, you said 5.2. Do you mean 4.2? Just for context,
5.2 total this is new and existing.
Yeah, new homes and resale. Yeah.
Got it. Missed that part.
Gotcha.
Continue on. Yep.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yep.
A lot of people have that reaction. They're like, I thought I heard
the resale was 4.2, just for perspective.
Existing.
That's where I got you. Yeah.
Existing homes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The current pace of new, and just to put this number into perspective, the current pace of new home sales and existing home sales, about 4.5 million this year. Okay. So what you're going to see in headlines, I was up in New York 2 weeks ago with Lance Lambert. Do both of you know Lance?
Name sounds really familiar.
I've met Lance, in passing, but I don't know. No.
He's the former editor of real estate for Fortune magazine. He now runs a a service called Resi Club. It's really, really good in analytics and pricing and everything in residential real estate. Lance does a phenomenal job. Go follow Lance if you're not following him. But this year will end up, when adjusted for population growth and transactions, one of the lowest transaction numbers in decades when adjusted for population growth.
Yeah.
So I think the first expectation is we will see more business next year. Why is that? Because most forecasters are projecting that we will see a better mortgage rate environment. Mm-hmm. Now, we've certainly seen that adjusted over the last 30, 60 days.
Yeah, every time Keith and I have called a rate, we've been off.
I'll tell you this, man. Anytime, there are a couple things I'll guarantee you. One, if you try to forecast rates, you're going to be wrong.
Yeah.
I will guarantee you that.
Yeah.
And the second thing is that if you try to talk about this and what people are saying, there's about a 50% chance you're going to get it wrong.
You're right.
But
I think everybody's got it wrong the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure. And there were some people that went long on, we're going to see on this date, this happen, and all those things. But the consensus is we will be in a better rate environment next year. Now, that's based on a lot of things that are shifting in forward-looking data. But what I see from forecasters is that, by the end of next year, we'll be somewhere in, the low sixes, if not dipping our toe in the fives. So we'll see more transactions, more people. I'll give you an interesting statistic that came from Bright MLS on the East Coast. 70% of buyers in the last year abandoned their search because of price, because of cost. And that's 70, not 70% of buyers. It just got too expensive, right? I mean, anybody listening to this podcast is like, that makes sense, right?
I mean, we're in the Bay Area, and I got to tell you, the price of housing here, I just go, what in the absolute hell is going on? No, I'm serious.
I remember we did a pod once. You said, you know what the problem around here is? I said, what? You said, there's too many rich people.
No, there's it's crazy. Toll Brothers houses, which are shit. No offense to Toll Brothers, not like anything spectacular.
Fired. Yeah, now we're going to get an email.
They're not like a high-end developer. Let's just call a spade a spade. They do great houses, but you're buying Toll Brothers houses and housing tracts for $3.5 million. Going, what?
Yeah.
No, that same property in Texas is $800,000.
We have an affordability issue. Yes, we do.
I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, about an hour and a half outside of DC. And I was looking at a place that in 2019 sold for $400,000, selling for 1.2 right now.
Oh my God.
And those numbers are just, no matter the average price point, that's sort of the story in just about every market.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's where I consumers, when you see that, you're like, explain to me how that's sustainable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So the third thing is you should expect prices to appreciate on a very normalized level. The 10 forecasters that we follow at Keeping Current Matters average out to about 2.5% price growth next year in residential real estate, which, I would say somewhere between 3 and 4% is probably likely, which is very normal, very historically average for home price appreciation, which at the end is a very good thing.
I saw an article today, and I forget where because I try to ignore anything in the media, but somebody is forecasting a 20 to 30% drop in home prices.
Let's get them on the pod. I'd love to debate that
over the next few years. So it's the first one I've seen in a while where I was like, okay, damn, that is some good drugs. So what?
My question always in that, James, is based upon what?
That's what I was going to ask you. Is there a housing crash coming that I'm not familiar with?
Yeah, you've got a good answer to this one. I saw you give it at that event, and you unpacking is the market going to crash was really a good answer. So
I think this is a question that we have to take seriously, and we have to understand what we're talking about. Now, I think anybody that says the market is going to crash, my question back is based upon what, and I want to hear that, right? Because I can either then agree or I can disagree, and I can show you what the facts are. Now, we have a graphic at Keeping Current Matters, and I'll include this in what I give you, that shows builds going all the way back to the 70s. And the moral of the story there on that graphic, you saw it, Keith, when we were together.
Yeah.
In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we built more homes in this country than we have in the last decade and a half.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a reason for that. Anybody that's been in the business knows 2008 happened, and
I get PTSD every time you say that.
completely. The way I describe 2008, I was in the business, the first year, like in 08 and 09, we're like, all right, this is going to get better the next year. The next year, we're like, sure, this is going to turn around. And by like 09 and 10, we're like, we're pretty much all going to die. And I'm not even sure people are going to buy homes anymore. That was the story, right?
Keith and I met during that time frame. That's a different story.
Yeah.
Listen, I worked for when I went back into the business in 2000. I look back on this like, what am I doing? I went to work for Bank of America Home Loans right after the countrywide.
Oh my God.
Man, you might have sold your company at the right time, but you went to be at the wrong time.
The largest holder of distressed assets in this country when REO was a strategy.
Right.
REO was, hey, I'm going to become an REO agent, and we know the path the market took. So the thing that's driven prices up all across the country, and I'm not saying anything that people listening don't know, has been the massive undersupply. Oh, by the way, mortgage rates fall to 2.5. Everybody says we're jumping in, and prices go up, right? That's simple economics. That's what's driven price. And most forecasters would say we are undersupplied right now in the U.S., somewhere between 2 and 5 million homes, which is a ginormous
big
gap.
Range. Yeah.
But let's say we don't have enough homes for family formation and population growth. And so that's the issue right now. And the reason sales have slowed is not due to the number of people that want to buy a home. It's due to the number of people who can reasonably afford it right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So is the market going to crash? Here's the thing that I'll go back to what I said. This is a headline that you should expect to see everywhere. There's almost $18 trillion right now. And I write some of these numbers down if you don't have them. Most people don't. I do this every day. That's why it's easier. $18 trillion in consumer debt right now. Highest it's ever been. That's scary. That's a combination. The big buckets are mortgage, which, by the way, is the biggest bucket of consumer debt. HELOCs, auto loans, credit cards, student loans, all the things that make that up. Now, in mortgage, there's $13 trillion of outstanding mortgage debt in this country. There's an article that came out a couple of years ago that said mortgage debt has surpassed $10 trillion in this country. It's never happened before. And people freaked out.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound good.
No. There is another side to that coin, which I think you're going to get to. So
there is an absolute other side to that coin. And I think we know it in the business, and it's this. While there's 13 trillion in debt, there's 35 trillion in equity.
So 3x.
Yeah, but they failed to mention that. The guy on YouTube that says the housing market's going to crash failed to mention that. But here's the good news. Listen. Here's the good news. He has something you can buy to help you weather the storm.
That's right. And if you order now, you get 2 ShamWows.
That's right.
You can do it. But let me just give you a couple of quick things. And I'm going to give all this to you so you don't have to remember it. Back in 2008 in the housing crisis, there was 9.7, almost $10 trillion in mortgage debt. And there was 8 trillion in equity.
Yeah, right.
That's strategic default. That's the definition of strategic default.
Right.
Which is we owe more on the house than what it's worth. We're walking. We're out. Right. And even that, what preceded that was irrational exuberance. Remember that? Yeah. Irrational exuberance was, who cares what we pay for it? Because by dinner time, it's going to be worth $50,000 more.
Yeah.
Right. And we know what happened there. So today, 13 trillion in debt, 35 trillion in equity. And here's the moral of the story. When you start to look at the data on this, the one thing that I can tell you is that in COVID in the years past, and even post housing crisis, people made the decision, we're going to do it different this time. We're not going to do a cash out refi and go buy a jet ski and go on vacation and do whatever we think. We're going to do it differently. We're going to pay down this mortgage. We're going to be careful with it. And I mentioned this when we were together, Keith. You could make the argument right now this is where it gets very interesting, because people are saying this market could crash or is unsustainable, that we live in the strongest real estate market of our lifetime.
Ever. Right.
Ever.
We've never had this much equity sitting.
And you've never had this many homeowners that are sitting in the catbird seat going, hey, we're good.
Yeah.
Right? I'm good on 3% on my 30-year fixed. And it causes problems with inventory. We know the problems that it causes. But the housing market is extremely strong. But the argument then becomes, well, David, what about the black swan event? And the definition of a black swan event is
you can't predict it. Right. Yeah.
But I can tell you this. It's not coming from within the housing market. And people have to remember that. Every time somebody hears recession or we going into a recession, people think 2008.
Yeah.
Because they saw a family member get hurt. And we have to remember
it's recency bias, right?
Or the headline says foreclosures are up 10%. And it's that's right. They went from 1 to 10. Like there's one foreclosure, now there's 10. So right.
And it's not even that. It's like they went from 10 to 11.
Right.
But here's the thing I would say about this. We have to remember in this recession and looking back that a recession in 2008 didn't cause the housing crisis. The housing crisis caused the recession.
Yeah.
You know, real quick before we dive to our last question, we got to wrap up the show. You should watch the episode that we did with Ivy Zellman.
Yeah, Ivy's killer.
Yeah.
And she's the only one out there, to be clear with my words for the viewers and listeners, so we don't get this twisted. She's talking about down the line. But she talks about how we actually have an oversupply of housing.
I'm familiar with her argument there.
The whole birth rate problem and all of the other stuff. Again, 10, 20 years down the road, but just it's interesting if you ever want to go deep in that.
I've gone deep in it. I understand the basis of her argument. I will tell you this very openly. I don't agree with it.
Yeah. A lot of people don't. Yeah. For sure.
I think I understand. And logically, if somebody's listening, like, what does this mean? What she's saying is the rate at which we're building is kind of up and to the right.
Yeah.
And if you look at births in this country, they're happening at a slower rate. With population growth is not expanding like it has been. So I understand the concept.
And we'll leave it with this, just so you get a chance, since you were interested in it, go watch the documentary series called Birth Gap on YouTube. No, it's really fascinating.
No, I know. You've talked
about it
before.
Really the United States as much as it is other countries where there is a very serious problem with birth rates. And it's a bunch of economists that it's pretty interesting stuff. All right, Keith, wrap us up.
All right, this is how we end every pod, and thank you for being here, David. We've enjoyed it. We ask this of every guest. If you were an agent or a brokerage, what's the one thing you'd implement today to push your business forward for 20 and 25?
Besides using your business.
Besides signing up with Keeping Current Matters, what's the other thing people should do to drive their business forward in 2025?
I think this, and this is going to sound cliche, but it's this time of year. Have a plan and stick to the plan.
Yeah.
Because our business is not extremely complicated.
It's just hard. Yep.
Have a plan and stick to the plan. What am I going to do every week, every day? And you don't have to do 500 different things, right?
2 or 3.
Do what you're going to do. Commit to it. Bring some accountability into your life. That can be another agent. It can be, there are a number of ways to do that, but be committed to it. The agents that I see consistently winning have a plan and they execute on their plan.
Consistency.
Yep. Yeah. David, thanks for the conversation. Always enjoy it. We'll have you on again sometime soon.
Thanks, my friend, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Grateful for it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. We'll talk to you soon.
You don't want to let Keith down, do you? Hit subscribe, and not only will you never miss an episode of this podcast, but you'll also never make Keith sad. He's easily entertained.